SI points are not given away in the French League, they're given away in the EUL.
There you go. Very good point. We're going to talk about the SI points later and relegations deeper into Stage 2. We're going to try to have even more independent segments about all of that, as I'm sure this is a hot topic conversation, or at least will be a hot topic conversation within the next 2 weeks. No problems. Map bans are ready. Let's put them up on the screen for everybody. Going to dive a bit more in detail as the match is being readied. We speak 7-map pool down to 1. Oh, good lord, why does it do it again?
It's Oregon.
Oregon. Yeah, that's how you're calling it. Yeah, I wish you didn't call it that, but here it is. Oregon is
How many times have we seen Oregon over EUL and APAC? Like, I'm going to count it for, like, I'll see after. I'm not sure,
Actually,
it's probably like 50% of their matches have been Oregon so far.
Yeah, it's been a very high percentage.
So twice in the last EU Playday.
So this is the third one?
Yeah. And what if I go to APAC? Where is it?
Yeah, all right.
APAC North.
3.
Stage 2. Wait, I'm just trying to go through all the details that we have.
Got Boomer.
Oh my god. Boomer's not how to use computers.
I do this, God. I click the button. Is this router just keeps...
You can just go to Wikipedia,
1, 2, 3,
you know, and then...
5 and... This is the 6th one that we're going to have today.
That's what I mean. This is a 12th match, so it's 50% Oregon so far.
Wow. Look, if we're talking about Oregon and we're looking there, Tempra got the last choice between theme park and Oregon. I look over to my stats sheet and I say to myself, okay, they don't really like theme parks, so that makes sense. They played it once, lost it, whatever, no problems. And then I look at Oregon and I think to myself, they banned that more, they lost that more. You had a choice between theme park and Oregon, and you're going with the worst of the two. You better have something up your sleeve because it's probably not the best pick. However, it's not great for VP either, so...
You know what I want to say? Go ahead. You should go for Coastline as Tempra because that is a map where they really shine, but VP banned it first, so that one got shot out of the air real quick.
That is a very good point. I mean, okay, you know what? We talk about Oregon, basement's a big deal, and of course, top floor kids dorm are 2 big deal sites. You definitely have 4 sites that are very viable. Those are the 2 that we saw in the past that were really good, and up to now. Goyo, big operator on that. Shields in general, also big on that, but also Virtus.Pro, big on that sort of play style. Jess, do you think there's something that Tempra can do to disrupt VP in this sort of preparation that they usually give us?
I mean, you'll see a lot of teams ban Goyo against teams like VP because they just love it. I mean, we saw it on Villa quite a lot. Every time VP wanted to play Villa, everyone was like, we're getting rid of the shields. When we play Cafe, we'll get rid of the shields. We don't want you to have Goyo. That's what it is. And I don't know whether or not teams are stuck in that loop because we've seen VP go, okay, well, I can't have Goyo. No problems. I'll pick another operator. That's flexibility. And you can't always try and counterban a team. I think sometimes when it comes to VP and they're flexible like that, you're better off just picking something that comforts your lineup, comforts your push. And if you've got to deal with Goyo shields, I'm sorry to be rude, but you're a tier 1 player. Throw a couple of flashes in, get an Ash charge, get a grenade. It's like a normal deployable shield, but this one blows up, which is even better for you because someone might be behind it. So I think that they shouldn't put too much into that.
Oregon, my big deal, you know, Echo.
Oregon is really simple. You just get control of elbow, you get control of pillar, you win downstairs. That's how simple it is. If you go top floor, you get control of attic, you get control of games, you win the game. Like it's as simple as that. Just get control. And too often we see that is getting abandoned too quickly, whilst there's still like 10 million pieces of utility in the pocket.
All right, guys, I think we are ready to kick it off the game. But before that, let's take a look at what people think about this game. By the way, Jess, Hap, if you didn't know, but people can actually go and vote on these matches and tell us who they think will win. Yeah, it's super easy. Go on Twitter at R60SportsEU. It's scoring right at the bottom. It's like I timed them perfectly, man. What a professional. VP, 66% of the vote, 30% for Tempra, 4% on the draw. Understandable, a lot of people behind VP, but Tempra definitely have that glimpse of, it's like a glimpse of huge talent. Just takes a bit of time and preparation.
I mean, the French community is behind them as well. We've got a huge French community in Siege, so I'm sure they're behind them as well, and they're getting better.
All right, guys, let's all get together and have a chat about our predictions. I know, it's time for the trash talk to begin. Everybody is here. James, I love your hair today. It looks so good. Where do you cut your hair at?
My mom cuts my hair. Thanks. Thanks for reminding me that I'm not allowed to go outside.
I think Mother's Barbers, he told me it was called the other day. Can't remember.
yeah.
That's some
Mummy's
funny
boy.
name for it.
She's going to start out in business, actually. It's
Well, she cuts his hair and then she pinches his cheeks and goes, "You got a good broadcast job."
That's
Wanted
cute.
a little boy
Look,
to look beautiful for the broadcast.
look, we stand supportive esports mothers. This is what we do here on the show. And we all know quite a few of them in our time. But there it is. Virtus.Pro, I'm going for that. Draw for James, Tempra, and then Hap going for VP.
Let's go.
Usually, here...
That's how you know you win.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Des,
Hap, you
going
got
for
1 out of
Virtus.Pro.
6 right the other day.
Look,
That's
Des,
what you
You got
did.
0 out of
Des,
6.
you're
That is
throwing
bad.
stones from
Stack
glass
girl.
houses.
I am the stack girl. Look at the accuracy. Who's higher? Can you count?
Yeah, but
Hap,
you
or
have
do
a
just do it in
smaller.
increments of 10?
Yeah, no. You have a smaller sample size because you didn't do the majors.
That's very
Does
good.
this
Finish a whole
include-
season of predictions and then I'll listen to what you say.
I'm shutting up now.
Okay, you know what?
Good.
I like
Gio,
when Mummy and Daddy fight.
Gio, you voted for Tempra. Why specifically go for them?
I kind of just wanted to make it a bit spicy. It actually was really difficult for me to decide because I really, like Jess, I really love Virtus.Pro. I love watching their playstyle. I think they still have a few things they need to tighten up on, whereas Tempra actually kind of surpassed what I expected from them the other day, even though that they only drew against Na'Vi, especially as they played on Clubhouse, which is a map that they hate. And so coming into another map now, which they also hate, I'm kind of thinking maybe they got something up their sleeves. I don't want to discount them too much because I think I did that last season, or last stage rather.
Gio,
You
you're
have
so
any
strong with
sleeves
that
right
word,
now,
right?
Gio?
Hate.
What?
Hey.
You know,
They do. They hate Clubhouse. They banned Clubhouse 13 times.
that
not a
says
lie.
something, actually.
That's
People
hate.
change, Gio. You got to have faith in people. People can change.
Yeah, that's why I voted for them.
All right, I'll take that.
James, did you get enough sleep
look-
last night?
Actually, I
Never
did.
gets enough.
This is
Good.
the best sleep I've
I'm very
had
proud of you.
in a very long time last night. I went with the draw because I wanted to be special. No, because, well, for one, both of these teams drew their matches 2 days ago. So it feels like a pretty safe bet to me in some ways, but looking at both of these teams and how they've played so far, I actually respect the form that both of these teams are in. I think we saw a really good showing from Tempra, like you were saying, Gio, despite that Clubhouse map against an RV. Very much the same. Virtus.Pro is going up against a very strong and very well-coordinated Vitality and was still able to force out a draw. So I couldn't choose, so I just sat on the fence.
Fence sitters are still welcome here, despite, the connotations and all. But you know what? Let's actually pull it to the game. Gio, Dev, I know you're super excited to start it off. I know it's on Oregon, your favorite map, Tempra versus Virtus.Pro. Gio, James, please, all yours.
Yeah, we've become quite the pioneers or not even pioneers, but we just represent the Oregon games at this point, I think. We've had so many in the last 3 days.
I'm pretty sure I've only casted Oregon so far this stage in both EUL and APAC North League. I'll have to do the stats to check that one out.
Hap and I had, a little taste of theme park, but it's mostly been on Oregon. But you would assume that makes you really prepared. I think the big question here is, are Tempra going to be really prepared? Because, as we mentioned, this isn't their favorite map.
Well, I'm feeling very ready to get stuck into this game. It is Tempra, the French versus the Russians on Virtus.Pro. This bear has been asleep for a little while. They managed to scrape barely into the major, but now we're back into the season again, and they look to be in pretty good form with that roster change. Millen, as was alluded to, into the desk. But let's now jump into the operator bans to kick things off. It is Virtus.Pro getting rid of the Maverick. No, sorry, Tempra getting rid of the Maverick, which is exactly what happened when Virtus.Pro played Vitality the other day. They ended up banning the Ying against Vitality, but Tempra aren't so much known to be a Ying team, so I wouldn't be surprised if they change something else. Let's have a look. Capitao. All right, that's fair enough. Capitao can be very influential when used correctly, especially if they decide not to ban the Wamai here. Or sorry, if they decide to ban the Wamai here, which is what Virtus.Pro did in their game previously, as Capitao would usually get free reign when that Wamai is banned. There you go.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I feel like when you see a Capitao get banned, you just know that the Wamai ban is somewhere over the hill. There's no way that that's not gonna come hand in hand with one another. And then everyone's favorite, Clash, also gonna be off the board.
Yeah, that's a curious one to me. I don't believe we saw Virtus.Pro play the Clash at all against Vitality, and checking the stats, indeed they did not. So a bit of a strange ban there from Tempra, but sometimes Clash can be more of a comfort ban rather than a target ban. But as we get stuck into this game, I'm going to be really looking heavily at Virtus.Pro and how things look similar and or different to what we saw just 2 days ago against Vitality, and already starting out on their attacking side, very similar operator lineups on account of that Maverick being the only hard breach ban and the only gadget breach denial ban with Thatcher left in. They're really going to lean into this Thatcher and Ace in combination. We saw that for every single round when they played Vitality, and I'm expecting that to continue.
Locate and defuse bombs.
Now, Shockwave, obviously, he's going to be there on Ace. He actually did a pretty good job before. One of the things that we brought up the other day is the fact that it was always a Mission who really took that hard support role. So frequently, you'd find him on the hard breaches. He would be the one carrying the diffuser. That's now been handed over to Shockwave. He carries that responsibility as Milan, the newest player. He's come in and he's playing on second entry. He plays some kind of like support operators, I suppose, at times, but he's really not gone onto that role that a Mission vacated. So he had a good day the other day, but we need to see if that's going to be consistent so that we can judge better how Virtus.Pro are going to be moving forward.
Well, he's on comfort territory, and that's something you frequently would do when you bring a new player into the roster. Just stick them somewhere where they're comfortable, and sometimes you can let the rest of the team mold around it. And Milan played Zafir every single round last time, so I expect he'll just continue on that role, and that'll be really important, especially with all of the bulletproof utility that we see on the defending side. I'm talking about the deployable shield from Smoke, the 2 Vulcan shields from Goyo, and of course the Malusi. So that's going to be at the forefront of the mind of both Milan and Rask, who need to get rid of that util.
Well, Tempra just obviously set up their defense now. They actually have a really aggressive hold here in blue. This is something we have seen a couple of times over the last few days, except oftentimes you'll find a shield there to help alongside it. WTG looks quite cautious as he's sending in those nades. The ADS has, of course, been dispatched, and that's going to force P4 back.
Very successful so far from Virtus.Pro, and that drone ensures that Voy is spotted out. Rask to take this 1v1 gunfight now. He doesn't know if his left side is completely clear, and of course there's also the doorway and the electrical open wall to be cautious of. So I like this from Rask, not getting too aggressive. That C4, a combination with the peak from Chaotix, perfect from Tempra. And now P4 to get re-aggressive on this position. Virtus.Pro are back to square one.
You could see the sudden fear in his heart and in his eyes as he turned to try and shoot it, but it wasn't quite enough. And that does, of course, mean that you've lost that main entry. Rask is a huge player for Virtus.Pro when it comes to utilizing the aggressive playstyle that they often exhibit. And now with Tempra still holding very far forward, it's going to be really hard for Virtus.Pro to push through this, especially when you lose WTG as he moves on forward. Is the second one going to go down? Not quite, but there is just a minute remaining.
The Russians are stubborn, though, and they keep harassing Tempra on this blue hold. That is some kind of progress, but Milan gassed out of the wrist airs. A nice aggressive gas means he can't actually peek at all to support his teammates, and that allows Durza to get re-aggressive. He finds 2 on blue, and it's all on the newest player from Virtus.Pro, but I don't think he's got it in him to take on 4 from Tempra.
Not the first time we've seen him in this situation either. We've been here before, just taking that one shot down the stairs, but he's going to decide to go in from a completely different angle. Tempra will be expecting him to do this. You can tell by the pre-fires that are coming in around the wall, but he does get the first shot. He's going to be looking in for the second, sending in the lifeline to get rid of the shield, but right now there's no player right behind it. And he doesn't exactly know where they are either. He's running on really limited information. The Toxic Babe canister is going to deter him, but the kill at the end will be the final nail in the coffin for Virtus.Pro, and Tempra have a pretty decisive first round.
I really, really liked what we saw there from Tempra. They were constantly reaggressing on blue, and not in an unwise way. They always had something to going for it. So, for example, we saw Virtus.Pro kept throwing people at that position, but there was a bulletproof camera watching into the bunker outside the entire time, so someone from Tempra could call and enable this aggression then from the other players. We saw in particular Voy, after he was initially pushed back through elbow, decided to reaggress to support his teammate already in blue, and we had a great peek from Chaoxis, timed well with that C4 thrown over. Rask had to choose, do I either cover my back if they try and peek me, or do I shoot the C4? And of course, he chose a C4 and was killed by the player peeking. Another great example was that aggressive smoke from Shinka onto the rear stairs, forced Milon really far back, so he couldn't hold that angle and prevent those rotations and that aggression from Tempra down in electrical in boiler room. And that allowed then Tempra to reaggress and take down both the players in blue. Really nice shots in particular from Durza to clean that up and really lock things out.
It feels like a tale as old as time at this point, that Virtus.Pro really do well when they can unlock the chains that surround the aggression that they want to give. When they can give all of that as much as they desire, that's when they really show up, they really pop off. And just judging by that first round, it looks like Tempra really had a stranglehold on what it was they wanted to do and their ability to push forward and use what they have. Out go those black eyes from Durza, so that's going to give them more information. You mentioned that bulletproof camera before. It told them so much they needed to hold that defense. This could be something similar.
Yeah, Tempra very much leaning into the aggression so far, but what they've decided not to do on this defense is impact trick. You'll notice there's no impact grenades on any of the Tempra players, and that means from Virtus.Pro's perspective, it should be much easier to open up, in particular, the closet wall into the master bedroom. And with the 2 hard breaches, it'll really be so easy for Virtus.Pro not only to open up the closet wall, but also to open attic, which is their first point of contention. Thank you, medics, showing us that first wall, and then over towards attic. Instead, Tempra of leaning in too much into the wall denial, yes, there's a few mute jammers around, but that can be dispatched with a Thatcher EMP. We got this aggression in substitute for that. Surely P4's been drawn. What is that? He gets away with murder, finds 1 kill. And now allowed to rotate back downstairs. A huge oversight from Virtus.Pro, and that's their Thatcher off the board.
Oh, and he was so close to acquiring that second as well, just missing the shots, but the fact that he got away with his life is all Tempra needed to give themselves this advantage at the start. You mentioned it's the Thatcher that's gone. That's a massive loss for Virtus.Pro, and it's something that we saw happen back on Monday as well, and we saw how much that could oppress them. Tempra now going to be feeling very strong about that, as Virtus.Pro have got to change their minds and act on the fly to adapt to the situation they've been put in.
It makes it much more difficult now for VP. All that hard breach that I was talking about that should be really easy, Virtus.Pro now have to do it. I'll take a little bit more steps. So for example, we see that Ash charge from outside lobby downstairs, had to go into the roof of classroom to destroy that mute jammer, and now finally Shockwave able to open up that door. Well, that entryway, I should say, into the bomb site. Voy, though, still roaming downstairs. In fact, Tempra have quite a few players down here. So even if Virtus.Pro can get bomb site control, notice a lot of holes in the floor. Using that and the C4s, Tempra should be able to deny a plant if time ticks down.
Look at this. Durza might be ready to catch out Rask if Rask is unaware of his position. It's something that Virtus.Pro have run into so far, not knowing, and that's exactly what the situation is to be. Durza looking like he's having a very good game so far. He secures the headshot, and that means just 3 players remaining on Tempra. They have to try and make this plant, but when you have the Goyo down below, the C4 is still there to deny you. Holding onto the angles, knowing that Virtus.Pro have to push on in. One at the top of the white stairs, just waiting to make the move, but not going to be deterred just yet is Shockwave. 15 seconds remaining. Someone has to make this first move. In come the flashes as WTG gets ready to peek in. Not quite anything happening just yet as Shockwave goes in for the plant. P4 does fall. That's a good start. But there's going to be revenge coming out from the rest of Tempra. And without much effort expended, they secure themselves the second defense in this map.
I do wonder how long it'll take before Virtus.Pro start to read into this, because Tempra's playstyle is really taking the Russians by storm. And if I look at Tempra's history on this particular map, the only time they've played it was against Rogue last season. They were dumpstered. They really struggled, particularly on their attack. Now, we're on defense at the moment, so I think that's a bit more of a comfort zone. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself before we switch sides. But Tempra was only able to win their Dorms defense last time. So we haven't really seen their kitchen yet. Which is where we're going to this time around. So not only does that mean that Virtus.Pro don't have any info on how Tempra like to play this bomb site, but it also means that we don't have any info whether Tempra are any good at it whatsoever. So for me, if I'm Virtus.Pro, instead of focusing too much on setups and that kind of fancy business, just first things first, do your fundamentals, drone out T2, don't let a player like P4 just get an early kill because of a small misdrone. Just do your fundamentals and start punishing this aggression from Tempra. Everything else will follow.
And I have to say, you mentioned that we don't know how Tempra do on this site because we haven't really seen it, but what it suggests to me is that they've been really putting in the hours to practice it and be ready for this stage. We discussed at the beginning, they haven't historically liked this map, and now 2 rounds in, they're looking incredibly dominant on it so far. So even though we don't have that information, part of me feels confident in saying that, I expect Tempra to know what it is they're doing or what their plan is going into this, and be ready to execute that, because so far it's worked.
Virtus.Pro stacking up for a small tower take very early, but Pasha on the other side looking to pinch. Stun grenade checks whether there's an ADS in there, and wow, that's perfect. That Ash charge through the drone hole not only takes out that Vulcan shield, but also the mute jammer that was denying Virtus.Pro information on that white hallway. Really, really nice job there early from Rask. And that's one of 3 deployable shields that Tempra have brought to the table. And in particular, not only the 3 shields, but also those 2 Evil Eyes from Maestro will force Virtus.Pro to be extra careful with their utility usage to make sure they can dispatch with all of those obstacles.
They still have these 2 these 2 shields in showers that they'll have to get rid of at some point if they had to put the pressure there, as Durs are still just sitting pretty. Obviously, P4 had his position affected by that first shield going down. And you can see Virtus.Pro are rolling in the drone, something that has kind of let them down so far in this game. So maybe they're just trying to take it a bit slower, ensure that they have that information. They'll know that P4's here in the showers corridor, and that's going to be something they'll have to deal with if they are to push on forward.
Everything is already looking so much better for Virtus.Pro. Starting to be much more aware of this aggression. A peak like that from Durza this time gets punished and eventually shut down. Also, Virtus.Pro have dismantled the utility. You mentioned that showers control completely obliterated, not only with that player taken down, but with all the utility in their arrays. Still an Evil Eye for some information, but Rask is actually on a flank. P4, though, gets away with murder again. Aggressively onto WTG and gets that revive off as well. That's pretty impactful. However, he doesn't stay alive for long. 45 seconds on the clock, and Tempra still trying to take these aggressive positions. I'm looking at Rask here. Can he have an impact here on the flank?
Well, he could be about to catch out Chaoxys. That's exactly what he does do, but he can't secure the second kill as Void turns things back around onto him. Virtus.Pro have to make this push in. 2 players remaining on the side of Tempra, so suddenly Virtus.Pro are finding themselves in the man advantage for the first time in this game. You have those eyes in the form of Shinka down through the hatch, but Shockwave's going to be making the plant over and dining. There are the angles being held by the rest of his team, and Void's narrowly gonna miss, not able to bring down the player as he's planting, but instead getting him after the deed has been done. A post-plant situation, but it shouldn't be too difficult if Tempra can bring down these last 2 players of Virtus.Pro. But Void and Shinka are both gonna be falling, and Virtus.Pro, thanks to Pasha, take their first round.
Finally, we're seeing Virtus.Pro wake up. I really like these adaptations from round to round we've seen. And the main thing is just being more aware of Tempra and the aggression that they want to bring to the table and saying, look, guys, we're not going to let them get away with that kind of ball. Like, let's just have our gun up and watch these angles. And if you add on top of that, the fact that Virtus.Pro was so ready to counter all of that utility that was brought to the table, in particular, right at the start, really nice Ash charge through the drone hole from Rask, dismantled not only a mute jammer, but also that first Vulcan Falcon. And I didn't quite see the clock, but there was plenty of time remaining after Virtus.Pro had also not necessarily fully taken control of Showers, but at least cleared out the 2 shields, the Evil Eye, and down Durza inside. So great stuff from Virtus.Pro, already some improvements, but now they're going to have to step that up onto their basement attack as Tempra have re-unlocked this bomb site.
And this site was obviously something the Virtus.Pro struggled with quite a bit. Obviously, they came here, or Tempra chose to come here on the first round. A lot of their push came in from construction. You had that one player in the form of Milon who was pushing down the tower stairs, but he had to sort of change his mind when he realized he was the last one standing. But maybe Virtus.Pro could change things up now they kind of know what to expect.
Tempra haven't changed anything on their defense thus far. Exactly the same setup that worked like a charm for them in the first round, down to the same operator. So we're likely to see a lot of contention around blue, unless if Virtus.Pro decides to completely change their strategy. The main operator difference here we're seeing from Virtus.Pro's side is WTG sticking the Hibana that he brought on the other bomb sites instead of that Yana that he previously took attacking the basement. And in particular, that's going to enable Virtus.Pro to get that hatch open in electrical, which well, they'll have to take control of meeting to do that. So it's not like it's easy, but I do think that's where they're looking to go for thus far. As you can see, the drones and big tower. With that meeting hatch open, it'll really suppress a lot of this aggression from Tempra.
It really did feel like a lot of their problem was the fact that it was all being played on you know, one-dimensional plane. Maybe if they can get that hatch open, it would allow them extra angles of attack that they didn't have last time that could really facilitate a success if things are to go that way. And it does look like WTG is really wasting no time to make it up there to open the hatch. There's no one directly below, but Chaoxis is going to be watching into box and up towards the tower stairs as well, as there are 3 players from Tempra positioned in the pillar area. There you go. Get rid of some of that utility. That's going to make it a lot easier for you, as you now can prepare a bit better to move into the site.
So that hatch itself doesn't necessarily enable Virtus.Pro to really clear blue or take out those players in Harry Potter. Tempra can still play around that. You can see Voy and Durza in particular. But what it does enable them to do is firstly take out that bulletproof without using any explosive utility. And that bulletproof is really essential for Tempra getting info on the players pushing outside blue. And on the back of that, you'll notice Tempra immediately take more passive positions compared to what they were doing last time they held blue. Pushing behind their deployable shields from Harry Potter, from the hallway, instead of getting up in their face. And this might be the opening Virtus.Pro needs.
Yeah, not playing quite as ballsy, but you have to remember all 10 men are still on the board, so it will still be a bloodbath at some point, and that's going to be started off as Russ gets the opening kill onto P4. P4 is someone who really showed up in that first round and shut Rusk down. Well, how the turns have tabled, as I like to say. And look, there's so much more space now for Virtus.Pro to play with just Voy remaining in the pillar area, forced to retreat.
Yeah, but this is really good from Tempra. Despite losing that man, they've actually reinforced off of the wall at elbow, so Shockwave's now going to have to open that. He'll also need the Thatcher to come by to get rid of the mute jammer, but this is just becoming so much more difficult, especially there's still a Goyo shield there, and Tempra don't really have that much of a numbers deficit. Chaoxis also can hold the hallway. Tempra is still positioned fairly well here for the round win.
All right, things aren't completely over. WTG just sneaking on down the laundry stairs. Maybe he can get another angle from behind now that Tempra have decided to situate themselves more passively. But they seem to know that he's coming, and yes, they do. Shinka gets that shot, but it's going to be Chaoxis going down as well as Shockwave plants the diffuser. They get it down unimpeded, and now suddenly Tempra in the post-plant situation. 2 players remaining. They've got to go up against 4 attackers, and things are looking very difficult for them right now. Durs is just looking around the pillar, but he can't make the shot as he gets downed himself. Rusk holding on to the weapon for dear life, knowing that only Shinka is remaining. He's got a shield for cover, but when you peek out against the shield, you no longer have that cover and you get shot. It's a good look for Virtus.Pro after struggling so much in the first round.
Yep, 2 back-to-back plants and 2 back-to-back round wins for Virtus.Pro put them back on the board, and even Stevens with Tempra now. Overall, I've got to say I still liked what Tempra did there. Virtus.Pro kicked things off by taking meeting control incredibly quickly. We noticed there was some mute jam signals, but none that actually prevented those drones around meetings, so it was really easy for Virtus.Pro to get that control, and within 1 minute down, they already had that hatch open. Moving forward, then that enabled them to get the deployable camera and then push and get aggressive on blue. They found a pick as well, which doesn't hurt. Tempra decided to peel back. They reinforced off the wall, but with Virtus.Pro, the amount of utility they've got with the Ace and the Thatcher, it really wasn't too difficult for them to establish strong positions for a plant. Now, the telling difference would have been if Tempra had some kind of plant style, be it a C4 or a gas canister, that would have denied that plant, because Shockwave only started with 8 seconds on the clock. So if Tempra had that, maybe that would have made the difference, and we'd be looking at them in a lead right now, but not so. And they're going to go upstairs instead of dilly-dallying too much on the mistakes they made last round.
This is really interesting here where Chaoxis is, because Pasha's drone is not too far away, and actually I'm wondering if he is going to spend a lot of time hanging around. Nope. Instead, he's going to be moving back in through the attic wall. Virtus.Pro obviously really struggled at the start with a lot of that information gathering, and I think it looks like they've improved that at least over the course of these last few rounds.
Virtus.Pro have definitely regained their confidence. That's something that Tempra really threw in their face in the first 2 rounds. There's constant aggression. Tempra didn't care what Virtus.Pro had to say. They didn't treat them with much respect, and that worked out in Tempra's favor. But Virtus.Pro started to, I think, get their number back. Now we'll look at how they attack this round. Same operators on both sides compared to last round we saw this one attacked. But I do wonder whether Tempra can get away with having an aggressive player. P4 previously just played in T2 and got a pick, and as he's not doing that, Virtus.Pro have taken map control really, really early and already opening up here in the attic.
And obviously that early pick that you mentioned was onto the Thatcher, which was a huge detriment to Virtus.Pro. But so far, so good on that front. Pasha is indeed still alive, so they might get some use out of those EMPs. But this is a really interesting roam actually here from Durza, who's spending time down in the basement. Have Virtus.Pro drone him out? Do they know he's there? Obviously, no one's being sent on this roam clear to get rid of him, so he could be a problem later on if they don't deal with him now.
I do wonder whether he's got a C4. Yeah, indeed he does. We saw the Valkyrie rocking his shield on the dining defense, but C4 is more vital here on this particular bomb site. In the late round, if you still have that control of the ground floor, you can C4 plant denial. I believe we've got 3 of them on the Tempra side. So, ooh, actually an aggressive C4 position. But does he have the information on it? Not quite. Detonates it a bit prematurely. And that's now a little bit less plant denial that Tempra has available. You can see P4 trying to take an aggressive peek, but Virtus.Pro are playing this very steadily. Seems to get the job done, and great job. Thatcher EMP to disable the ADS, and then a lifeline to take out that Vulcan shield. Virtus.Pro very much in control of the utility game this round.
Yeah, definitely good coordination from the team as they work to get rid of everything that will be in their way when they begin to move in forward. Rask, once again, has taken position on this big window, and this is where he met his demise last time, because if you remember, Durza was upstairs in small tower, and he jumped out and got rid of him. But this time it's going to be Rask getting the shot onto P4. Something we saw again last round. That means that really aggressive positioning from the Jaeger is no longer going to be a problem for Virtus.Pro as Chaoxis gets taken down too.
Nice shot there from Shinka, holding down the fort. That aggressive take from WTG didn't matter, but now it's just Void. Shockwave trying to force down this diffuser. The flank is successful for 1 kill. But this will have to be a retake in the post plant. Smoke goes out. He doesn't seem to have a lot of info. Still has a C4 in the pocket, but Rask says you're not going to get a chance to use it. Takes him down with a nice headshot. And Virtus.Pro, well, again, in control of this game.
Too quick and too knowledgeable. There was Rask. It was a difficult position for Void to be in, but now that's the 3rd round in a row that Virtus.Pro have actually been able to put the diffuser down. It seems that these post-plant situations become very overwhelming for Tempra, who succeeded so well in the first 2 rounds at denying the push in the early round.
I think from Virtus.Pro's perspective, it's really narrow margins that they lost the first 2 rounds. In particular, their laundry attack, it was just that they tunnel visioned way too much on blue and didn't take control above. Admittedly, they didn't have the Hibana, which would have helped them open the meeting hatch. And I think because of that, they tunnel vision, they tried to brute force it a bit too much, and they didn't expect that aggression from Tempra. Into the second round when Virtus.Pro lost, it was mainly just the fact that we had that really aggressive peak from P4 in tower. So just a tiny misdrone from Virtus.Pro basically spiraled into losing a whole round. And after Virtus.Pro was like, all right, let's just fix these tiny little things. It's just narrow margins we're losing these. Let's plug those holes and then we'll be swell. And that's very much what we've seen ever since.
Well, now Tempra, for their final defensive round, are going to be coming down to the last site, the one that they haven't visited yet, and that's going to be Meeting. It's not been a particularly popular site in EU. We see it a bit more in APAC, where they seem to much favour it over the dining site. And so, once again, we spoke about how when it came to dining, we didn't really know how Tempra would go about it. We didn't have enough data to make that judgment. And I feel like, once again, we're in that same situation.
So Virtus.Pro, once again on the attack, once again taking control of Big Tower. Always a nice first step. Nice job from Milan to get rid of that lobby default camera. Never underestimate the power of taking out default cameras. Even at pro play, a default left outside or left in the building and somewhere that would have just taken 2 seconds to shoot and may actually swing the tide of a round. But I really like this from Durza. Tempra have noticed, okay, Virtus.Pro consistently bringing this Thatcher. We can't really just let that dictate these walls getting open. So we'll position a bandit in attic to try and bandit trick that wall. Now my question is, for Virtus.Pro, can they get around it? Looks like they're focusing for now on the meeting wall. A thermite charge goes onto the wall, but that should be detonated in time to counter that electric claw and EMP as well. And that's the wall open very nicely from Virtus.Pro, but they still have to deal with this one upstairs.
It was a nice try there from Tempra, but as you mentioned, the upstairs wall is still going to be a hindrance. P4 is holding on in Meeting, so it's not like Virtus.Pro can just rush straight on in, but yeah. As you say, getting the attic wall open now. Tempra tried, didn't work out, and now Virtus.Pro have what they need.
Yeah, really nice job there from the Ash, destroying the floor underneath where that bandit would be tricking. Great way to deny the bandit trick, and that's why we saw VP open up the meeting wall before the attic wall.
Ooh, okay. Getting completely smoked out, that's going to force Rask back, and instead he's just going to take the opportunity to send in a drone. They need to, of course, know where everyone is, but that was a great shot there from WTG straight into P4. Things will turn around somewhat as Milan is also sent into his grave, make that Pasha as well. But after some brief infighting, they're going to be able to move on through the attic as a start. But Chaoxis, he takes down the assassin in the form of WTG, and that leaves just 2 players. Make that nearly 1 as Shockwave is sent into an injury. He won't be able to make that plant like he has done for the last few rounds, and he's going to have to be picked up if they want him in the game. Rask trying to look up through the hatch, but he's not even going to have the opportunity to move on through the stairs as Voy is ready and waiting for him. Tempra, they lost it for a few rounds, but they picked it back up for the last one, and they take round 6.
That's a great example of how Virtus.Pro can tickle the right boxes and start to breach onto the bomb side. They can, in terms of utility, still outplay Tempra, but if Tempra can catch Virtus.Pro off guard, in this case, in particular, credit to Voy, who was playing really aggressively in the attic, that worked out so well for Tempra, and they knew exactly which strings to pull to get Virtus.Pro to start squirming, and just tugged on them until they won the round.
Well, now it's Virtus.Pro's opportunity to bring their best defense. Obviously, had a bit of a trouble on attack at first. They swung it back in their favor. They let the last round slip through their fingers, and the side swap is here to tell us what the outcome of this game is going to be. Now, Tempra, they're bringing quite an interesting operator lineup for this one.
Yeah, quite aggressive. Only bringing the one hard breach is not something we've, it's not unheard of, but the Lion is just a bit of a strange one. I guess you could link in and say, hey, Lion's a hard breacher. He's got that secondary hard breach. You can open up that one hatch. So for all intents and purposes, this is a very similar operator lineup to what we saw from Virtus.Pro on the lineups when they were attacking downstairs. The main thing that's missing, though, is a Thatcher. And when left unbanned, I feel like there's not really a substitute for that Thatcher, especially when Maverick's taken off the table. But it is Tempra who got rid of it. So I do wonder what's the intent here, and if Virtus.Pro lean into the Electroclaws from Kaid, I don't see Tempra really being able to open up a lot of these key walls or hatches.
Well, it could be a struggle for them. I think it'll be interesting to see how it is they utilize the E1D on the side of the Lion as well. We know that some teams really like to bring those operators that allow you to track your enemy a bit better. And as Virtus.Pro started to warm up and feel a bit better in hitting their shots, maybe that's going to be a problem for Tempra, or at least something they feel like they could do with a bit more of a security from that perspective. And they know that the meeting hatch is obviously not being electrified, but as you mentioned, there is the Kaid on the side of Virtus.Pro, so it's still something to be wary of.
He's actually still got one in the pocket, so he could technically Kaid trick that hatch if he hears some util being used on it. But I don't know if he's necessarily prepared for it to be a secondary hard breach charge. And personally, I haven't actually done the maths on whether there is enough time to electrify that hard breach charge before it detonates. But great use of util from P4. Clearly not very many ADSs left in blue, and that means that that crucial bulletproof is taken out. Also, the hatch has been opened very clearly, so that puts Virtus.Pro again in a bit of a sticky situation.
A lot more pressure is going to be applied onto them now. You still have WTG present in elbow there, just in case anyone from Tempra does decide to move in. But obviously, Rust is trying to peek around this corner because they don't have the support of the camera. In go the smokes to facilitate Tempra's move on in, but it actually doesn't work out that well for them, with P4 finding himself as the first casualty. Milon's ready and waiting, just in case anyone is upstairs. In goes the C4, as Durza falls on the side of Tempra once again. So far, this attack is getting weakened and weakened. Chaos is just sat on the stairs, but he's going to have his head taken straight off. Milon, who was behind him, was unimpeded in that endeavor. And now, with time beginning to run out, Tempra are going to be feeling the pressure. Shinka, the only one remaining, but he doesn't even make it into the building. A flawless round from Virtus.Pro, who seemed to play it perfectly the more time went on.
Sad to say for Tempra, but it doesn't look like we've seen some significant improvements on their attacks at all since they really struggled against Rogue. They finished their attacking half at a 1-5 deficit. The only bomb site they were successful at attacking was Dorms. So this is where things hopefully come back into the realm of possibility for Tempra, because they are attacking that objective, but I don't have a ton of hope. I think that the main issue wasn't even necessarily operator lineup. You know, I could be critical of their lack of a Thatcher, but I never really saw a situation where that Thatcher was really being missed. It was more so little 1v1s here and there, like those long angles from blue. That smoke was a little bit scuffed, as you could see. Shinka somehow managed to peek around the right side of the smoke and take off the head of, I couldn't see which player it was, I think maybe Durza, who ran into blue. And on top of that, Milon's just allowed to roam in attic. Despite that C4 going off, Tempra were not aware of that flank. They didn't have a drone, they didn't have a player watching it, and they didn't hear that C4, so maybe a little bit too tunnel vision on what's going on in the moment, and they got punished for it.
Well, they still have the opportunity, of course, to bring things back around and learn from their mistakes. They have decided to, of course, bring the same attacking operator lineup. So what you were talking about before, where they may find troubles with not bringing a Thatcher, they've decided that's not going to be too much of a hindrance for them. The question is, have they learned enough from what went wrong in the last round and to apply that to this one, despite the fact it's a different site?
I don't think the lack of Thatcher is going to be as big a deal here on Dorms, in particular because of the way we saw Virtus.Pro once their Thatcher was taken out. They just used Ash charges from below to clear out the mute jammers that were on the main wall in Dorms. But I don't think that's necessarily going to be as big a deal, because Virtus.Pro aren't so much bringing wall denial in terms of like utility. They stick on a wall and then it can't be hard breached. They're bringing impact grenades on Shockwave, which they're going to use to deny any utility on that wall. But of course, Ace does have 3 Selmas and there's only 2 impact grenades, so it might just be a simple game of redundancy from Shinka that might get the better of him. Pasha, though, aggressive, as we know he likes to play, takes out 2 drones, teases out a peek, but backs off. No, he wants more, and he's still eager to go for it. He gets too greasy, it might mean losing his head.
He's certainly hungry for it. Pasha, who didn't necessarily show up on Monday quite as much as we've seen from him in the past, he knows that he wants to be stalking out his prey. None of the attackers are actually too nearby, judging by the course that he's taking down towards the showers corridor. Instead, focusing, obviously, a lot more on the upstairs. They've opened up the attic now, and this is a really interesting position from Shinka on the roof, shooting over towards Small Tower and also into the kid's window.
I will point out that the redundancy of having 3 Selmas to only 2 impact grenades is kind of redundant now because Shinka used one of his Ace charges, his Selmas, on the attic wall. So the only redundant hard breach we now have is Chaox's hard breach charge, but it's going to be much more difficult to use that. No, actually, a Selma goes off on the wall inside big window to open up an angle into kids. This is quite unusual from Tempra, not to say it can't work.
Boy, right outside the window, and that's a fantastic nade straight onto his target, just as he wanted. That's the smoke deleted. Any of that late round denial now no longer on the board, and Voy following it up with a shot onto Shockwave 2. A great start here from Tempra, who seemed to struggle. There's the next nade, but it's not actually going to find anyone, but they should still be happy with what's happened so far. Position here from Ras, not quite going to be able to hit the target as he's looking for it, and now he knows that there's 2 angles he has to be worrying about. Smoke goes in, Chaoxis gets another kill, and this is where Tempra really have the opportunity to move in and plant. That's exactly what Shinka does with the overarching security of Durza getting that kill. Great C4 from Milon, but is it going to be enough? The plant has gone down, and it's only him remaining up against 4 players. It's not. Tempra take the next round after a disappointing round 7. It looks like they're back on the board.
I really, really love that attack from Tempra. That may be the only time since Oregon has been reworked that I've seen a big window kids execute. Like, that's just it. Everyone these days is going for these master bedroom into closet executes. And that's why we see this mini game of impact tricking that wall. You can very much see that was what Virtus.Pro were expecting. They even had an evil eye at the top of White Stairs facing towards that direction. Like, this has become meta at this point of Oregon to do a master take. And as such, the defenders prepared to counter that. Tempra took things by storm. You could see no one was actually positioned from Virtus.Pro in a way to counter that Selma that was on the thrown through the big window onto the wall into kids, which then forced the position of WTG into the corner where he could get naded. There weren't even any ADSs in kids because Virtus.Pro were positioning them in positions that would be more utilized for a standard push, but Tempra just didn't go for that. So I really like this. Some creativity from Tempra is catching WTG and the rest of Virtus.Pro off guard.
Catching them off guard seems to be a really huge benefit. And obviously Virtus.Pro are going to be feeling that down the backs of their necks because right now they're at a 4-4 split. They're completely even. Obviously, you don't want to be getting a draw, but neither one of these 2 teams are really dominating this game so far. And so you have to be very aware that the end of the game is nearing and nearing, and you have to get that edge over them. You can't afford to be caught out.
Yeah, I still have confidence in Virtus.Pro here. Despite being at an even 4-4 at the moment, I think that there are a couple things Virtus.Pro could do to counter what Tempra just did. Like, even move one ADS into kids, and that denies the nades. There's no Thatcher to clear that ADS. You would have to throw in stuns or something, and by that point, when you actually burn through an ADS, it telegraphs the defenders that you're trying to throw some utility through that window, so they're a lot more careful. Maybe they position themselves elsewhere so they're not vulnerable to nades. On top of that, the Selma that was used to really force WTG into that corner by putting the Selma on the wall through big window into kids, that can be shot if someone's playing at top White Stairs. So there are a couple of little things now that Virtus.Pro understand a bit better how Tempra wants to attack that bomb site. Virtus.Pro should be able to implement pretty immediately some changes that I think will spell the difference. And I'm worried about Tempra going back downstairs to that laundry attack when eventually after this round it does get unlocked again, because we didn't see a lot from them, a lot of substance on that attack. And of course it was a flawless win on the defense from Virtus.Pro.
I definitely think that it's a smart decision from Virtus.Pro to return back to the same site they just lost. Obviously, everything you just mentioned is basically comes down to, we have an idea of how they're going to approach this. They've telegraphed what it is they're going to do or how they like to play it. Now we have an idea of how better to do that. It's about the adapting. And that's something that, interestingly, Tempra didn't really do. When they were on their defense, every time they lost, they didn't straight away return to the last site. They moved on to the next one. And I think for some teams, that's maybe a bad idea.
That's actually a really good point. Now I look at it, Tempra lost their defense. They immediately changed from kitchen to laundry, and then immediately they lose that one. They go over to dorms. Now, admittedly, this was partly because of the way those sites opened up. It happened to coincide with them losing those rounds, but I think it also tells us a little bit about the play styles that these teams are implementing. Tempra is trying to play a little bit more off of that aggression, particularly when we're on their defense. They were getting away in those first 2 rounds mostly with catching the catching the attackers off guard by taking aggressive positions and coordinating really well between each other when they wanted to make aggressive plays. And I don't really think that's necessarily how Tempra are playing on the attack, so we'll see. Virtus.Pro very much trying to play a bit more stock standard, I guess you could say. Take map control, open up areas which you'd typically see, use that hard breach, clear ADSs, counter util, and I think it makes them a bit more predictable, but it definitely means that they're a bit more thorough as well.
Yeah, my big question is obviously going into this next round, Virtus.Pro are going to be thinking, how do we adapt? But then on the flip side, you obviously have Tempra who need to be sort of reimagining their approach, because they know that Virtus.Pro are going to adapt. You know that they're going to make that effort. This obviously isn't one of those teams where, regardless of what it is you do, whatever adaptations they try, it's never going to work. They seem to be fairly evenly matched so far in this game. So, like, what big things do you think maybe Tempra could change on the attack itself to ensure they still have that edge?
I think Tempra have proved this game already that if they do something a bit unorthodox, it'll catch Virtus.Pro off guard. So the advantage that Tempra has had all game is unpredictability. And they've been using that to their advantage a little bit. That's why they won that last round. And yes, they're going to be more predictable now that they're doing this same attack. But I reckon just throw a spanner in the works. Do basically the same thing, but have someone push up wide. Maybe have one person try and lurk around master and push from that direction at the same time. It also could work if Tempra maybe finally get that kill onto Pasha, who is roaming downstairs. If they can chase that roamer and establish a numbers advantage, maybe it'll help a little bit more. But yeah, I think the key to it is just be unpredictable, Tempra. Like you've already telegraphed that attack, and yes, it was an unpredictable attack, but now that you've shown it, Virtus.Pro might be a bit more aware. So just keep spicing things up.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's all like perfectly fair enough. As we kind of mentioned, that there's no one dominating team in this matchup. So the next few rounds are obviously going to be the ones that determine what it is that happens. And, these teams, they've already experienced the EU draws so far. So they're going to be like, all right, we need to turn this into a win now. We need that to happen. But was it you who predicted a draw?
Yeah, I did actually.
So you want it to be a draw?
Maybe, but look, I care more about being right now than I do about my predictions. And at the moment, what I'm feeling is Virtus.Pro are going to win the next 2 rounds. That's what I'm feeling in my gut. I think that as they revisit that Dorms attack, Tempra will probably try to do mostly the same thing. I think Virtus.Pro will be able to counter it. Okay, what is this, a dock? I didn't actually catch this the first time around, but that's a strange choice of okay, no, it's just a 6-pin master anyway. Never mind. Nothing interesting's happening here. Everything is standard, stock standard operators on both teams, exactly the same as what we saw last round. But what I expect will happen this round is Tempra will try and do more or less the same attack. They'll start by opening attic, they'll rotate over to big window, pressure from that side, they'll repel kids and try and nade out that player in kids, and then collapse onto the bomb site from there. And I think Virtus.Pro are going to be much more ready for it. I'm interested to see where Rask puts his ADSs and whether he actually moves one into kids this time around. He is indeed doing exactly that, so that's perfect. This is going to counter that grenade that we saw thrown in by Voy last time to open things off and take down WTG, the smoke inside. So I think that ADS may be quite impactful. And, oh, a bulletproof camera watching big window as well. So already Virtus.Pro are significantly moving their util to cover off the attack that Tempra did last time, but we're still seeing the stock standard util in normal places, that Malusi Wub in the Dorm's main hole just there, and of course the Goya shield in attic and in the Dorm's main hole facing towards Trophy. So I like this from VP. They've made some adaptations, but they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
I think that's definitely a good way to go about it, because if you do that and you completely change what's happening, the attacking team are going to notice that pretty quickly and they'll take advantage of the situation, you know, fairly swiftly. So it's certainly nice to see that. Nice to see that they're going against a lot of the very specific things that made that last round work out so well for Tempra. And now they're going to obviously have to rethink very slightly how it is they're going to go about this. Already seeing a decent amount of patience, I suppose. They're not making any kind of rush.
What do you want to do with that drone, Tempra? Sneaky drone, got all the way to top white, and Tempra are trying to play off of it. They've actually fully rotated, and contrary to what I expected, Tempra are actually deciding to change it up, and I think this is the right decision. It means that some of that utility Virtus.Pro was investing in the other side of the map, where Tempra pushed last time, will be nullified. That's another really impactful bit of information gathered by this drone, seeing Rask move around, but Milon getting aggressive in Trophy, decides better of it. He's going to once again move this Vulcan shield to face Trophy now that VP is starting to realize that Tempra are going for a more standard closet and Trophy push.
You see the Shockwave is ready and waiting. They've got the drone actually down below in Classroom, so they know they're going to be safe if they need to move on in there. There's the attempt to open, and the nade as well.
Oh, that's perfect. Boy, a really great read, but Shockwave does get distracted long enough to allow Shinka to open up that wall, at least with one set of ace. I think he's still got, though. Okay, so yeah, that an ace was saved on this attic wall. I think that was smart. Thank you, medics. Chaoxix used his secondary hard breach on attic so that we had a bit more redundancy for this wall, and it meant that Shinka had all 3 aces. So even though there were 2 successful impacts, we still get this wall open.
Now they just have to start making their way through. As you mentioned before, that Goyo shield had been moved to make it harder. That's why P4 here is getting ready with the lifelines, but that first one's going to get burned by the ADS, so that just has to be finished up. The shield does eventually go down, with just Rask present in dorms. He's going to be ready and waiting to catch some of that. But interesting there, Shockwave has decided to go on a bit of a late roam downstairs. Instead, actually, he's decided to hold on to the stairs. And now that we're nearing the 20-second mark, this is where Tempra have to begin making their move. They're 4 men only, and that was very close. Chaoxis takes a decent, hefty chunk of damage, and P4 goes all the way down. There's the diffuser gone down as well, as Attic is held pretty strongly. Finishing things up there is Pasha. And that was a great round there from Virtus.Pro. You said they needed to adapt. You said things needed to change. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, there you go. I think that goes to show how strong Virtus.Pro are at defending that particular bomb site. The fact that they could not only set up some utility and positions to counter the Tempra attack from what they did last round, but also, even though Tempra changed things up, Virtus.Pro was still keyed in enough to be prepared for that. In particular, I want to credit Shockwave. I know he's sitting at the top of the scoreboard right now. That's not why I'm crediting him. He had a really impactful play just there. Not only was he able to get the first pick onto Voy, but he double impacted the main wall. And yes, there was a bit of redundancy there with the ace of Shinka saving all 3, and eventually it was opened. It delayed a lot of time, and I like the idea from Tempra using nades to try and kill the Maestro ready to impact trick, and then eventually Voy actually just peeking those holes. It was a really good idea, but Shockwave was just ready for it.
Well, this is a nice, interesting change here from Durza. No longer are Tempra going to be sticking with the same lineup that they've really been following so far in this game, but instead they'll be bringing Ying, and she's going to be equipped with the smokes as well. We've seen a couple of teams decide to, have her with the secondary hard breach, but obviously when you have that on the Lion, it's not quite so necessary, and the smokes, of course, can be used to obscure whatever it is they need, and they have 4 of them on their side as well.
The concern for me is that if Tempra try to go for some kind of really aggressive take with the Ying, we have that Malusi, which may slow down, well, quite literally slow down any attackers trying to get aggressive and execute at the same time. And, well, Tempra went for a desperate 4v5 execute last round, and I don't think just a couple of Candelas will make the difference here. Every single round that's been won on the attacking side on this map so far has been thanks to a plant, and thanks to taking strong map control, countering what the defenders are doing, and then planting the diffuser and paying for post-plant. We haven't seen really aggressive executes work out. It's usually about the mid-round that tells the story of whether the attack is going to win it or not, and that's not a good way to start it for P4. You had a good start to the game, but Rask has had his number ever since.
That was really early, not the loss that you want. And I was actually going to comment on the fact that Milan is on a really broad roam. Rask almost the entire opposite. He just ran straight into his face. They're going to have the opportunity to open up the meeting hatch now that the EMP has been used to negate any of that electrification. No. As straight through does that shot go right onto Chaoxis. That's Milan once again. He found himself up in tower last time we were here and no one knew, and he's getting away with it a second time.
And what's more, allowed to get back to the bomb site. Now that Virtus.Pro in a 5 versus 3 with all players on site, even if Tempra decide to try and clear roamers, it'll all be for naught. There's just such a significant advantage to Virtus.Pro right now, and even with some smokes on both Shinka and Durza, even with the Candelas, I don't think it'll make the difference.
Trying to move in after that Candela, but it's going to be Voy who's the first casualty. He can get the shot onto the defender, but Rask does pick up a couple for himself. It's a really quick round there for Virtus.Pro, who now find themselves on match point. James, you said during the rehost, I fully expect to see Virtus.Pro get these next 2 rounds, and I think you looked into a crystal ball, my dude, because they did.
Just looking at the patterns, and the pattern was last time Tempra played this map, they actually had all 6 rounds of attack when they played against Rogue, because that was the starting side for them. They only won 1 of them. I think that pattern's going to continue here, unless if they can do something really strong here on their kitchen. Now, having a look at their kitchen attacks last time against Rogue, they failed it twice. And that really is just so foreboding for them. I'm really concerned here for Tempra. I definitely voted for the draw. I predicted the draw. And we saw some great things from Tempra in their previous game against Na'Vi, but I just don't think that they've got what it takes here on Oregon to take on Virtus.Pro, especially not right now here on a kitchen attack.
Obviously, unbiased. You have to believe in both sides. It's basically a Disney movie. But no, definitely.
Does that mean I can sing?
No. For those of you who don't know, every time we're not on camera, the likelihood of James singing is above 100%.
If such a thing was possible.
Please stop. I already suffer. We don't need the audience to do so as well. But I'll tell you who is suffering so far. It's looking like it's Tempra. As you say, you don't have an insane amount of hope for them going into this next site, even though in this matchup so far, they've really had some wonderful moments that have looked so hopeful.
Yeah, I don't like to be overly critical, but I'm going to pull up one player from Tempra in particular. P4 started really, really strong on the defense, got 2 opening picks in the first 3 rounds, and then subsequently was the opening death for the next 4 rounds, plus that last round. So sitting at 2 opening kills and 5 opening deaths right now, really struggling on this entry, particularly on the attack. And I think that lack of teeth has really been the difference for Tempra, comparing their attacks to their defenses. On their defense, that aggression panned out for them. On the attack, the entries just can't find a good footing.
Yeah, they certainly seem to be having those kinds of struggles, but each round is a new dawn, a new day, and they're feeling good. So opening up a lot of the floor here in the top of small tower, so they have all of that insight, but the wall gets opened very quickly there by the attackers.
Voy's just trying to work some issues at the moment on that floor, taking out his frustrations on those floorboards. Destroyed. And that is to clear out any util and positions, especially if the plank gets down there. It'd be super easy for Tempra to hold, but it's easier said than done. There's still a lot of work to be done. Also want to point out the way that this wall has been breached just the top half. It's a nice little exothermic charge that Shinka placed on the floor directly where you're looking right now, right next to where he's standing, and it'll actually destroy the top half of the wall. But the only issue with that is now Tempra can't walk in. They have to vault in through that hole. It does really restrict their mobility. And the only hard breach, I guess you could try and place an exothermic or the secondary hard breach from Chaotix on the lower part of that wall, but you're just so exposed when you do that. So I'm a bit concerned about how that's going to impact Tempra here.
I think it's very interesting how a lot of the defensive positioning is off-site, and obviously you have Shockwave upstairs as well. I'm just watching out for the Showers corridor in case anyone decides to come around and flank them as they contemplate how they're going to begin to move in. There goes one of the E1Ds, but so far nothing found, and actually it's going to be Rusk getting that opening kill onto Shinka. It's a good job he got the wall open before that happened, but it does mean the diffuser has been dropped, and in sight no less. The smoke coming out really deters their move forward, but it makes life so much harder here for Tempra. Duz is trying to go around a different way. Maybe he can catch someone out and make his team's life somewhat easier, but it doesn't happen. Rusk comes in with the second kill of the game. Or of the round, I should say. With just 15 seconds remaining, Tempra are running out of options. There's a kill from Chaoxis. Can he secure another one to help things out? No. Rusk is really on fire here. They're gonna go for the plant anyway. Chaoxis does get one kill, but is it gonna be enough? No, it's not. Shockwave finishes things off there, finishing it off for Virtus.Pro. And the hope that Tempra cultivated for themselves really got lost in the final rounds of that game.
Really, really nice defense there from Virtus.Pro. Tempra just had no response. They thought, let's try and just full send at site. We don't want to clear out showers. We've cleared out the utility, the evil eyes in the bomb site. We think we can get away with a plant, but they didn't account for Rask on the long angle from White, and that really punished them there. A great game from Virtus.Pro by the end of it, despite losing the first 2 rounds to some aggressive defenders. Virtus.Pro regained their momentum, and I'm really happy with how they played this. The fact that they won the last 3 rounds straight, great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the really important thing here, is the fact that despite the fact they faced adversity in the beginning, they were able to turn it around in their favor, pick themselves back up, and make the most of what they had to secure themselves a win. That's a really important thing for a team to be able to do, especially at this level. But analysts, I want to know what you think. Break everything down for us, because it was pretty juicy.